Oh, I'm such a devotee of the heart, I just think that the heart is our compass always. And we live in a world of broken hearts. And I just want to be a part of what tends to that individual and collective heart. Hey, Jana, welcome to the Cosmic Heartist podcast. I am so freaking excited to be recording this episode with you and to be talking about the astrology of 2025. I feel like for everybody, whether anyone knows astrology or doesn't understand the astrology, we are already starting to feel like it is a revolutionary year in many different ways. And as we know, the breakthrough only comes after the breakdown. And unfortunately, it feels like we're very, very deep in the breakdown.
Mm.
So I'm very interested to hear your perspective about everything going on. But before that, I would love if you could introduce yourself and share with us some of your favorite things in the world. And also, what got you started with learning about astrology? What piqued your interest? Oh my goodness. Okay, so who am I? Like introducing myself. I always love this question because I think it's such a difficult one to answer, and it can be answered in so many ways because as humans, we are so complex and so multifaceted. But when I really break it down to the simplest thing, I'm a friend, I'm a lover, I'm a mother, I'm a teacher, I'm somebody who cares deeply about humanity and our well being, and most importantly, our mental health and the way that we connect with our intuition. And so, all of the different modalities and the things that I study basically come to that, as all the rivers lead to that, our mental health, relieving suffering, and the human heart, and how we can be in better relationship with life, with ourselves, and with each other. So I've never answered it that way before, but yeah. And then how did I come to astrology? I mean, I don't feel like I've ever not been a part of astrology. I grew up on an acreage in Saskatchewan outside of a really tiny town, like 150 people. And so I always grew up with the stars in my backyard and watching the moon. And I even remember as a teenager, if we were bush parties back then, if it was overwhelming or I just needed space, I would go and find a place where I could just stare at the stars you know, and, um, I had a girlfriend who had a book. You might have heard of that book. That's the birthday book, where it's got a title for every single day of the year. And she had everybody she knew memorized, like their day and what it meant, like what it was titled and their strengths and their weaknesses. And I was like, how is it so bang on for everybody? And then I started to learn about astrology, and it was just a really natural curiosity that I followed over the course of time of my life. And I didn't really mean to become an astrologer. It was kind of by mistake. My curiosity led me to gain a lot of wisdom and a lot of experience with it. And then I started theming my yoga classes because I was in a style of yoga called Anusara yoga for a long time. And a big part of it was themes, like bring this heart centered theme. And I was like, how do you come up with all these different themes all the time? I was teaching like 15, 16 classes a week and, just living my life. And I realized that at first it was really simple. It was a full moon or a new moon or the solstice or the equinox and really obvious things that I would bring in. And then it became more often where maybe I'd listen to an astrology YouTube video or something and I would pull something from that. And then I started to blog about the sun and the moon, or the new moon and the full moon, pardon me. And I'd bring that in. And then I just started theming every single class I taught on what the astrology was. And one of my girlfriends was like, "Could you look at my chart?" And I was like, "Oh God, I don't know. That's not really what I do." And she's like, "Well, please, I would love if you could look at my chart." And so she came to a class, and after class, I just pulled her chart up and I started reading it. And I was like, I don't even know if this makes sense. And I wasn't looking at her, I was looking at my phone to see the chart. And finally, I look over and she's just got tears streaming down her face. And she was like, "Oh my God, I've never felt more seen in my life. Like, you have such a gift. You need to share that. You need to do this with more people." And so that's kind of how it all began. It wasn't like I was like, I'm going to be an astrologer.
it was just a really natural unfolding. And for whatever reason, my brain and my sensory perception and my intuition, it's just a divination tool that really works for me, and I get it. I see the patterns, I understand the logic. You tell me a new astrological like technique and I get it instantly, and I start scouring my friends' charts.
Mhm.
I'm like, "Oh yeah." And I'm like, "That's so true about her. Oh yeah, they're totally like that." And it's just I can't help myself. It's just such a natural curiosity for me.
Yeah, I love it. What are your sun, moon, and rising?
I am in tropical Western astrology. I am a Libra sun, but conjunct Pluto, so very
Mm,
scorpionic. And then
mm,
I'm both in my rising and my moon is Virgo.
Virgo. Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm Mercury
Ooh,
ruled. I'm a talker.
yeah.
I'm super curious. Yeah.
I love that so much, and I can resonate so much with everything that you said. How I feel like becoming an astrologer is never really a plan. It's just
Mm.
like once we start seeing the trends, we feel like, wait, we need to share with people these trends. And once we start sharing with some people the trends, other people are like, wait, how do you know that? Tell me more. And my absolute favorite thing is coming across a skeptic and being like, I don't believe in astrology. And I'm like, you
Yes.
don't believe in it, huh? Let me give you a piece of my mind. And by the end, they're like, so what do you say about the compatibility of this sign and this sign? I'm like, you said you didn't believe in astrology.
Yeah, exactly. Or the one that the non-believer who all of a sudden is like, "Oh, how do you know that about me? Wait, no, that's bang on. Nobody's ever known that about me." You
Yeah,
know? Yeah.
exactly. And then all of a
Mhm.
sudden, they're the ones reading the horoscopes. And we're the ones having to remind them to read for their risings and not for
Or
their
the
sun sign or both.
yeah, and they're in my DMs nonstop being like, "Hey."
So good. It's so good. I love that
Yeah.
origin story of yours. And I think that's a great place to just take it into the astrology. Which, like, since you said you're able to kind of see these themes, what are you seeing as the bigger picture of 2025? Like, what is the main goal here?
I don't know if there's a goal
Mm,
necessarily. I actually just did a different podcast, and the woman who was interviewing me reflected back to me. She's like, I'm seeing this as a bridge year. And I was like, that's exactly what this is. This is a bridge year because the biggest, most impactful transits that we have this year are all occurring in the outer planets. And the outer planets don't typically all change signs in the same year. Like Pluto spends, I'm going to just hit pause. Pluto is going to spend 20 years in Aquarius, but it spends as little as 7 years in a sign because it moves in the shape of an egg. So Leo is really, really short. Aquarius is really big, right? So, or a longer time. But we have Neptune and Uranus. Pluto just at the beginning of January, landed in Aquarius. Neptune, which is the next furthest out planet, is going to go back and forth between Pisces and Aries and land in Aries in 2026. Uranus, the next furthest out, is in Taurus. It's going to move into Gemini, back into Taurus, and then into Gemini in 2026 as well. So it's like this dance between these two worlds, like this bridge. And not only that, but Saturn is also going to be changing signs. The nodes just changed signs just before we recorded this. Jupiter always changed signs every year, but like literally every single outer planet and our karmic planets are changing signs in this year. And that is rare. We've never seen that in our lifetime, and we won't see this again in our lifetime. And if you want to, that what I just said probably doesn't make a lot of sense to a lot of people, but you just think of this. They are culture changing planets. They change the landscape of the way humanity moves, thinks, reacts, creates, evolves, the way power flows through the what is being developed, like what's being innovated. Like it changes literally everything, but usually
mhm,
it's just one of these changes in like maybe 2 or 3 years. But we have everything changing all at once. And not only that, and actually, you are the one when you asked me to come on this podcast that pointed this out. we're moving from feminine signs into masculine signs. So signs of like more receptivity. We don't look at feminine and masculine as gendered. It's not men and women. It's like, you know, receptivity versus taking action, like an inhale versus an exhale,
Yeah.
stillness versus movement. And the elements are like water and earth are the feminine, and fire and air are the masculine. And we're moving from water and earth to fire and air.
Mm.
Like that is, thank God the North Node just moved into water.
Yeah. Yeah.
We have some
Yep.
water, but yeah, it we are going to experience change at a rate and on a level that it will take us years for our minds to catch up to what just happened,
Mm.
you know?
Yeah. Yeah. Ooh, okay. So maybe we can start by talking a little bit about this shift from feminine to masculine. And also, one thing that I see also shifting is next year we have Chiron shifting into Taurus as well, right? And so we have that feminine side coming online next year. And Chiron, we know as the wounded healer. So it's going to be a little bit of a wounded feminine that we're going to see coming up again, I
Right.
feel like, which I feel like we're already seeing a lot of, but we're also seeing a lot of women starting to really recognize their power, and a lot of men starting to recognize the power in the feminine side within themselves. So I feel like the feminine has already been rising. And then with this Libra South Node, there has been a bit of like power play again. And then we have this Chiron shift next year, and we have the nodes that just shifted. And then we have all this masculine stuff going on. One thing, hold on, before we get into that, I want to ask you something about the nodes, because for
Mm.
people listening, they may be like, okay, but I heard like this podcast when I was basing the transits, I said that the nodes are shifting later this month. But some people have said that the nodes have already shifted. So, how do we explain that?
Well, I am sitting with the same question, and I think just one website is incorrect.
Yeah.
When we look at like just where you're gathering the data from, I hold on, I'm just actually going to look something up really quick because I trust my website because we pulled information from NASA.
Mm,
So
yep.
yep. So I know that my website is accurate, and
Absolutely.
yeah, and it has the node at the final degree of Aries on my website. So like that's actually the first degree. So I'm not sure what's going on here. I actually wanted to investigate this more before we got started today, but I didn't have a chance. So I'm not sure. I'm not sure what's
Hmm.
going on there.
Yeah.
There's some
Okay.
websites that are saying it's moved, like astro.com is saying that it's already moved. AstroSeek is saying that it's not. My website, we literally pull from like the ephemeris, or it's not the ephemeris, it's actually the NASA data by degree. I have it listed in Aries still, but it's
Got
at
you.
0 degrees of Aries. So I don't know what's going on there.
Okay. Well, to make it make sense, maybe we can just say that it's a year and a half transit. So maybe we're already feeling the beginnings. Maybe we're not. Maybe we're still feeling the breakdowns. Which it's always hand in hand, isn't it? We're never feeling just one at the same time. It's if there is a breakdown, there's also something new that's rising on the horizon.
I
So
mean, this
maybe that.
this brings like a really important piece to the conversation of astrology, period, is like it's not like there's this, I don't know, we want it to be this magic threshold, like we want it to be like, and it was here and now it's here, but like
Yeah.
we're looking at something that's way, 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 way out in the distance. And already astrology, the way that we define the signs in tropical Western astrology is not following the constellations. And the constellations are different sizes. And like we've already kind of like put things into this very neatly organized thing, like 30 degrees for each sign, which actually isn't the size of each of the signs. Like there's a lot of, we could go down some really big rabbit holes here.
Yeah.
So I try not to get too caught up on exactness, other than that keeps me on like a really beautiful pace. that
Mm.
like your experience, your lived experience is always going to be primary to, these particular degrees. Because I've been playing
Yeah.
around with like true sky astrology and sidereal astrology and tropical astrology, and I do find truth in all of them, right?
Yeah. Yeah,
Hmm.
definitely. I feel like when I was starting to learn astrology, I was like, okay, if I'm learning the Western way, I definitely should also learn the Vedic way because I am Indian, and I feel like it just feels right to learn the astrology of like my lineage. But there are so few resources on it. And when I went to India in I think it was late May, early June, I was trying to find books and I could barely find books that were not written in Hindi. So
Mm,
I really don't know how to get more access to that information. But all of this to say, again, I feel like it's and right? It's both of them. It's like, I love how you said we try to put it into neatly like 30-degree pies, but there's no way it's 30 degrees. Like, there's no way. And also, like, our brains just want a way to make sense of things. But then somehow the world keeps proving to us that there's no way to make sense of, I feel like, anything other
yeah,
than just have like a guide or an idea or a map, which is what I feel like astrology is, right? Just kind of guiding us
pretty much.
on the energy of the times. And we can choose if we want to believe it or listen to it. And we can choose if we don't want to. Like, my favorite thing to say is it's like a weather report where if the forecast tells you it's about to be really rainy, you're not really going to go out in shorts and flip-flops unless you really want to get wet and see what the rain has to teach you. Right. And just like astrology, it's telling us similar things, and it's up to us. Like, if we know that Chiron is in Aries, we can play around with our anger, but we can like, it's important to know that that anger will really humble us during that time, especially while Chiron is in Aries. Speaking of which, is like, we have Saturn moving into Aries, we have Neptune moving into Aries. But before we get into that, let's go back to this question about the feminine and the masculine, and what do you feel like it means overall, um, that we have the planets moving into masculine signs, but we have the nodes grounding us into feminine signs.
Well, I think just taking a step back, we have to recognize that this is a time of action. This is a time of change. And we can already see at the beginning of 2025, like things are speeding up. If we look at some of the outer planet movements, like Pluto moving into Aquarius, Aquarius is a lot faster than Capricorn, where it just was. Uranus is moving from Taurus, which, when you look at medical astrology, life force burns the slowest in Taurus. And Gemini is the most rapidly changing sign that exists, right? And so we're moving from like slower movements or slower activity into much faster activity. And then even with Neptune moving from Pisces, this like really dreamy, ethereal, um, kind of chaotic actually sign, into Aries, which is the beginning. Like Pisces is the ending of things. It's death, it's the elder, it's merging back to source. And that moment where in between Pisces and Aries is the Bardo and moving into a rebirth, when Aries is the infant, it's the baby, it's new beginnings, it's the strike of a match and the fire that when you strike a match, that's a different kind of fire than like a standing bonfire or a fire in your fireplace. And so we've got this like really strong endings that is moving from slower moving energy into faster moving energy. And if you even just look at, like, let's just talk Neptune for a second. If you look at the life of an elder, like things start to slow down, right? Like endings, things start to slow down. It's more reflective. You're looking back, you're receiving, it's a very different energy compared to the beginning of life. Maybe the child is moving slow because they're sleeping a lot, but the parent is like it's a time of more, it's so much change and transformation. And so just like that one piece of it alone, like more receptive, laid back, maybe not laid back, but like to get yourself into a receptive place, you have to be slow enough to be able to receive. There's this exercise of like releasing and letting go and making room to receive, where when we're in the masculine signs, it's like taking action and change and transformation, and it's a very different energy. And the other thing that I find interesting is these three planets. So Uranus is moving into a mutable sign, Neptune is moving into a cardinal sign, and Pluto moved into a fixed sign. So we have a mix of the three. And for anybody that doesn't know what that means, cardinal is where you're kicking something off. Fixed is like you're in the middle of it. And it's like you're fixed. I mean, the word kind of says what it is. And mutable, it's when it's changing, it's mutating, it's transforming. And so we have all three of these elemental modes happening at the same time, which I'm excited to see what that plays out like. Like there's a lot of change that's going to be happening.
Yeah. Yeah. And I feel like just with the nodes being immutable signs as well, it's like a reminder to be ready for anything that's about to come our way and to be adaptable to, yeah, really whatever it is to come our way. Okay, I have a question for you with regards to this slowing down. And because I feel like that's the undertone, right? With the Pisces North Node, the undertone is the slowdown, the surrender, the opening to receive. Because yes, I feel like we are going to feel so busy and like we want to do so many things, but then it's only when we listen that we're actually able to do. Because if we're doing without listening, then I feel like we're just creating chaos. Um,
Mm.
and unless we have a full plan, right? That's a whole different story in itself. But this Pisces aspect just brings up a question for me, which is what would you say is devotion? How would you describe devotion?
It's so interesting because I haven't really put devotion in there, because I
Mm,
see it. I see the Pisces North Node more chaotic than devoted, given
yeah.
everything else that's going on. Because Pisces, when not rooted, is chaotic. You just said that. That's exactly what you just said. When you're not taking the time to like slow down and get yourself into this place of receptivity and be in that more reflective state or receptive state, it turns to chaos. But we have so much change that it's really difficult to not be in chaos. And
Mm,
chaos is actually a very strong character trait of Pisces, right? Pisces is
mhm,
also where things go viral. So things move very fast. And it's also water, which, you put a tea bag in water and the whole water gets the flavor of that tea. So it's like things can move very quickly through this. So I am contrasting myself in saying that, but it's only because of all the other change that's going on, like the rapid speed of everything. And never mind the fact that Saturn was just in Pisces, or I mean, it is still, it's going to be moving out of Pisces in 2025, but Saturn was in Pisces, putting this boundary up against our devotion, putting this
mm,
boundary. Like, and you look at what's going on in the world, like okay, there's two things happening. There's one, like, kind of part of the population that is prioritizing tech over God, right? Like playing God through technology. And there's this other part of the population that's having like this, in America, especially, this huge renaissance of Christianity, where all of a sudden, like, so many more people are turning to Jesus and Christ. And, so there's like these two things happening at once. And that is Pisces, like the two fish swimming in opposite directions, right? And so which way are we going? I don't know which way we're going. Are we going back to God, or are we moving away from God? And is like organized religion really taking us where we want to go? Or is it? I don't know. Maybe it is. Maybe this is the best thing to ever happen. But like at this point, I don't think I can make a call on it yet, because it really depends on every individual. But what I would say is that chaos and the suffering and the change and the confusion and like all the travesties of the world right now often will bring people to their knees. And our definition of God or creator or source or the universe or the simulation or whatever your definition of it is, you start to define it on your own. Because when you fall to your knees because of whatever suffering you're going through, there's nothing between you. You're all of a sudden, you're just like, you're either giving up or you're like giving in, right? Like surrendering to, right? And I think that North Node in Pisces can bring us to this surrender point that we allow our own divinity, like we allow our relationship with whatever creator is for each individual to actually come from the inside out of necessity. Do you get what I'm saying? So you asked me my definition of devotion, right? Is that what the original question was? Which kind of hasn't been where I've been, but for me, I'm always in devotion. Like I have such deep trust that we are being guided, we are being led to a more beautiful, more loving place all the time. I trust that this incredible gear system of the planets, right? Like it's like a gear system that the configurations, although they're going to take us through sufferings and they're going to bring us through war cycles, and all of it is to flush out the shadow in order to bring us to a greater experience of our own light and authenticity. And so I really believe, and my devotion is in that trust that we are being taken, we are being guided, we are being led to a much more beautiful place. How we get there, I mean, what if it's too easy, we forget about God, you know? If life is too cushy and comfortable and we don't go through that discomfort, we forget. We become super selfish. We become too individualized and disconnected. And, there's people who, somebody just called me woo for suggesting that the sun impacts our hormones. And I was just like, wait, are you so disconnected from nature that you don't see that the sun is literally the source of all energy and life on earth? You think that it's not impacting us? Like, how disconnected can we become from our own nature? Like, we are a
Yeah,
part of this, like, grand universe. It's one. We are one. We're all interconnected. So, yeah, I mean, like, I don't believe that any of it is a mistake, even the
mhm,
parts that really suck and aren't explainable,
yeah,
you know? And so that
and
trust, that's my devotion, is that trust.
yeah, yeah. Oh, Jana. Okay, so something you said really brought up something in me, which was how you said that when things are hard, we are definitely very clearly looking for God. And when things are easy and comfortable, we kind of just forget. And I feel like a victim to that right now at this very moment because I feel like, in May when I lost my dad and things were so hard, I was like deep in that, like, I believe that everything is happening for a reason. And I believe so deeply in God. And I was listening to my mantras and, like the whole world, it was this Pisces that the whole world is one. We're all one. There's just life and death and there is love. Like that's all it is. And then like just through the year, I think it's just the natural way of our relationship with God as well. It's like on and then off, or like it's very high and then very low. But the other day I started listening, or I think it was maybe yesterday, day before yesterday, I started listening to my mantras as I was journaling. And things were good. It wasn't that things were hard and I was looking for God. Things were good and I was looking for God. And how beautiful is it when we find God when things are good? Because it just adds so much more beauty, so much more magic. Like, why is it that we're only looking for God when we're in a time of such deep need? How much more beautiful can the entire world be if we were always looking to co create with God? Not just because we're in need of co creation with God, but just because, well, I don't know, we believe, like just what you were saying, like we have such deep trust that everything that's happening is what's meant to happen. And we're just devoted to showing up for whatever it is every day. And someday it's absolute shit. And someday it's some days it's like the most magical days alive, but how can we be so in for all of it without being like, this I want, this I don't want?
And yeah, these are really great existential questions. I think that part of it is that the longer we remember, the less we suffer. But then we have these things like losing your dad. I lost my mom, and I didn't lose faith in God in that moment, actually. It brought me closer because I trusted that she was now in, Creator's hands, and that she was returning to source. Like my faith had to, it naturally strengthened because that trust was there. But when you look at astrology, and you see this all the time in astrology, there's never a lack of polarity in astrology. It's always a dark and a light. There's always shadow and light. There's always pleasure and pain. Like the duality is always there. Like even, you look at the astrology of this massive wealth transfer that just happened. Well, there was so many people that got poor, like, more poorer. There was these some people that got richer in this time, and like I'm not I'm not saying that people are doing something wrong when they're on the suffering side of it, but we all take our turns on both sides, right? And just because one thing is happening for one person, the exact same energy and the exact same full moon or the exact same transit affects everybody differently. And I notice, like, even when my mom, like in the deepest grief, when somebody would be like, "You'll be grateful one day," and I just wanted to punch them in the face because there was nothing in me that was grateful that my mom had died. Like that was some of the greatest suffering of my adult life. Um, I I recognize that even that suffering was an experience of, it was a sacred experience, right? And so, uh, it's and here we are, like I lived in LA for years, and so I'm deeply tied to these fires. And I'm like, how can I say that about the fires? Right? And we can't say that right now. How can we say this about the war and the destruction? We can't say it right now. We can't. We literally can't. That is some of the worst shit that you can say. It's even like uncomfortable to be like, at least you have each other. No, my house just burned down. Like, no. And at the same time, one of the things I love so much about LA is the people, the most creative, resilient, collaborative, community driven. Like it's a different kind of people that live there. And nobody would ever choose this kind of destruction. And I know the character of the people that are there when their grieving has had its time. There is going to be something beautiful born of those ashes. There will be a phoenix rising moment. And like I just said, I wanted to punch people in the face at the very suggestion of that in the depths of my grief. And so I hesitate to even say that, but it's just true. That's just the cycle of life. That is the cycle of life. That is. We aren't like in a war cycle forever. After war comes peace. That's We're born and we live and we die, and then maybe we're reborn, maybe we're not. Like we don't really know what's going on. I believe we're reborn, but I also wonder, can I be reborn somewhere else? Like, can I get off this planet? And so yeah, so I think that the more, like, I believe when I'm in my highest points, I'm also in a co-creative dance with the divine.
Mm,
Like when I'm creating anything, it's never just me.
yeah.
Never. So how close can we keep creator, divinity in our heart and in our everyday? Like that, I guess, is the question.
Mm,
I guess
mm.
it's just, I mean, but people forget. That's what we do. Again, it's human nature. We go through these cycles of remembering and forgetting and remembering and forgetting, just
Yeah.
like the planets retrograde and then they go forward. And it's, we go around the sun continually year after year. Like
Yeah.
life is cyclical.
Forever. Like that will never change. And Jenna, I'm sending you so much love for your mom and for the way you navigated that grief because when I was navigating grief, I feel like I had you in mind and the way you were navigating your grief. And that gave me a lot of like permission and a lot of ease. And so thank you. Just thank you for your grace and thank you for being you and thank you for sharing your story. I know it's not always easy to come online and share about what's going on in your life, and the way you did it while you were going through it is so admirable. And yeah, just my heart goes out to you. So thank you. Um,
Yeah.
and and so we've been talking about the Pisces part of it pretty much. So for anyone that's like, what is the North Node in Pisces? I feel like it's this conversation that we just had. So let's bring in Virgo. What is the Virgo side of it? Because there are people that say the South Node is what we're moving away from, but what I love so much is when people say the South Node is what we're integrating deeper into. And so how do we what you were saying about the like people offering this other side, right? It feels like when we're going through this Pisces, this like really deep thing, there's always the other side that's a little more critical, a little more analytical, a little more like brain oriented. And that feels like Virgo energy to me. Um, so yeah, what do you have to say about the South Node and Virgo and what are we really meant to integrate?
Okay, I'm going to throw a little bit of a curveball because we can't talk
Yeah.
about the nodes without talking about eclipses, right?
Okay, go.
So, because the eclipses happen in the signs of the nodes. So, we
Yeah.
have the eclipses in Virgo and Pisces. And well, the first one in March is still in Aries. It's the Aries new moon. And then the full moon in March is in Virgo, and that's an eclipse. And then the Virgo, okay, so the North Node is in Pisces, moving towards, like you said. The South Node is in Virgo, maybe moving away from or integrating. I also really like to use that because we never let energy go, which it becomes a part of us and it morphs and we learn from it. We have two Virgo new moons this year, right? So the new moon at the end of August and the new moon at the end of September are both in Virgo. So if we're letting something, we're like a one definition of the south node is to let things go, but then we're getting to Virgo new moons. Like no, pay attention to Virgo. And so um Virgo to me, so Virgo and Pisces are that axis. The axis is an axis of initiation, right? Because Virgo is to become the best version of me before Libra, where you're welcoming in a sacred other. And Pisces is the elder that then dies and is reborn into Aries, which is the infant. So these are two really significant life shifting moments, like life defining moments, right? Virgo also, it gets a bad rap for being analytical and being critical, which great, that's true. But also Virgo hails from the angelic realm. And Pisces is returning to source. And so this axis of initiation is asking for the absolute best of you in Virgo and the part of you that is the most connected to source in Pisces. Because when are you more connected to source? At death and at birth. Like you're going there and you're coming back from there. Like you're leaving your body and you're coming back. Like, and then, the angelic realm, like that's why Virgo, Virgo in its cleanest, purest form as an angelic, like coming from the angelic realm, the reason there's so much perfection in Virgo is because they actually can feel it. And Pisces is super sensitive emotionally, but Virgo feels everything. It might not be an emotional thing like Pisces, but Virgo is so sensitive. Both these signs are very introverted. Like take time for you, like tap out, turn off the news, turn off the social media, like just tap out and reconnect with like your angels, and God, right? Like that is such a huge piece of this access and these eclipses. But also, you know, these are both signs of the healer. Chiron, some people put Chiron as the ruler of Virgo. Some people put Chiron as the ruler of Sagittarius. And you mentioned Chiron being the wounded healer, but it's also the teacher. It's the one that can take the wounds and turn them into wisdom and then share that with the world. And the elder is where we go for the elder teachings in order, because that experience is more valuable than knowledge, right? Like I can study a book, but that's nothing compared to the lived experience. And so we're going to have to be doing a lot of checking in, like what is my experience in this moment right now. Maybe things are being pulled one way, but my intuition is telling me to go another way. My connection with source and that knowing that's inside of me is driving me, is propelling me forward in a certain direction when the whole world is saying go this way. Like, what are you going to trust? Where are you going to go? And like Virgo also is paying attention to details in a different way. And Pisces is about compassion and empathy and like some of our deepest dharmic work ever, which is to be in service. That's Virgo, is to be in service. But Pisces is like this, like everybody's welcome to God. God's not turning anybody away. All of us are children of God, are children of source. And so like you can't really have Virgo without Pisces and Pisces without Virgo. Like Pisces may be more ethereal and Virgo can be more material. And maybe we're letting go of some of the material world as we're moving more into this greater etheric, energetic reality. Like maybe we're integrating all the physical stuff into a greater understanding through the non-physical, right? And we allow the physical to shape shift based off our connection to the non-physical. I don't know. I mean, I'm just kind of riffing on the themes.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, and all of that also makes me think of how, with this Virgo South Node, the importance of being grounded and rooted in our body and honoring that we have a body. And while we have a
Not,
body, what are we going to do with the body?
yeah, you're not getting away from that. I mean, you will at the moment of death, but like the body's with you for this life. It's your little thing.
Exactly.
Mhm.
Exactly. And I feel like we can look at it as, um, like, I want to escape out of this body all the time. It can be like, I don't want to be in my body. Or it can be like, wait, let me sit with my body to see actually what my body can teach me. And I feel like that is a high side of this Virgo South Node, because when we do sit with our body, I think we kind of end up getting a sight of like the divine, and then having, like, it
Mhm.
allows us space to dive deeper into the divine. Like when we sit to meditate, for example, or when we sit to create art, or when we sit just open, there is so much possibility as compared to when we sit, um, trying to digest a mental overload because we just decided to sit on Instagram for 3 hours, and our body is struggling to digest everything that we've just seen. And just this value of the body, I think, is such a big piece that is coming back up. A random side note, but I saw, someone on Instagram. She was talking about how she has 28 tattoos that she got in through her 20s, and as she's turning 30, she is laser removing all of the tattoos that she got, which sounds very painful, but also that feels like this Virgo South Node, like coming
Mm.
back to the body so deeply and realizing like it's us, but also it's something we have so temporarily.
Yeah. 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 Yes. I don't really
So
have much to add to that, but you're right. Like it's not a mistake that we've been doing all this somatic work and recognizing the way that our issues are in our tissues. And we can, if we work very consciously in our bodies, we can release our history and we can be free of past imprints. Like we actually can. We do not need to carry stuff forever. Like
yeah.
tattoos is a pretty serious imprint. But like on a emotional or on in the level of like trauma that we've experienced, we don't have to carry it forever.
Mm,
We can transmute some of it. But you did also say a word that's really an important word for this Pisces North Node, and that is that it does lead us to want to escape. And I'm not sure that escapism is necessarily wrong through this next 4 years. I mean, we don't want to turn into alcoholics or like just escape into the world, like, leave the world or, like we don't want to escape. We want to participate in the world. At the same time, though, we're going through this huge renaissance with like psychedelics and plant medicines, and that's all the realm of Pisces. It's also the realm of Neptune. And so, some of that escapism, like I remember the first time I ever did 5-MeO DMT or the Bufo toad medicine.
mm,
It was a complete escape from this reality for, the time that the medicine was in my system, that absolutely reconfigured my relationship with reality. And so sometimes we just need to escape, especially in, you know, times of deep suffering.
mm.
There's a reason why humans are attracted to dance, right? Like so many ceremonies have dance that go all night long, and
Yeah.
it's a sacred ceremony. And here in the West, it's like the EDM festival circuit. We like go out and dance all night long. And, like these moments and these forms of escape, I think can serve as a beautiful teacher and an ally through this time. um, Sometimes it's nice when you're stuck in the minutia. So Virgo, to be stuck in the minutia, you can't see the bigger picture so much. And so maybe we're not supposed to be taking in every moment of the war through our screens, right? Like maybe it is good and healthy for us to take a break and imagine a different reality and start to dream about a peaceful world, because what we're dreaming about becomes our reality. And
Mm,
if we're constantly just like inundating ourselves with all these images of war and death and fires and all the things that are actually real, that are happening, maybe not in our own homes, but they're happening in the world. Are we bringing that back home by imaging it so strongly for ourselves? Or is it a good idea for us to like go off into a fantasy and dream of a new world and dream of a new way of being and dream of a new way of community? Because we are at this bridge, or we're in between these two worlds. And I don't want to bring this old world suffering into the new world. So it's important that we go and we dream and we anchor in new realities that are different.
mm.
Our suffering will transform. We'll find a new way to suffer because we're humans, but like,
Yeah.
God, I want to get off this ride, and I think that like I'm not alone in that. There's so many of us that just want off the ride of whew. And so can we dream and bring an image and an emotion through? And sometimes we just got to get away
Mm.
from it.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
use escapism wisely. Don't use it to your detriment. Don't use it into addiction, but like I'm okay with escaping for a little while.
I love that. Use escapism wisely. That sounds like magical note from Saturn and Pisces, because for a long time with Saturn and Pisces, especially when Saturn went retrograde in Pisces, I was saying that it was like Saturn smoked some weed and just kind of needs to rub off some edge, especially with Saturn being Saturn. So this line just, I feel like, complements that perfectly. Okay, Jana, so we've spoken about the nodes, and I feel like that is the underlying trend. Of course, maybe not, because Pluto is like a 20-year transit and the other transits are so much bigger, but at least for the near future, I feel like it's grounding to stand on. Do you think we should talk a little bit about each of the planets and their shifts and what they mean? Or do you think that's a lot?
Well, we could go, I don't think we can go into a lot of depth, but we can definitely, I think, like get a beautiful high level of helping people to understand some of the energy shifts for sure. Where do you want to
Okay.
start? You want to go with Uranus first? Or do you have a plan for us?
Um, I was gonna say we start with Pluto since that shift
Sure.
has already happened and we're already kind of steeping in that energy. And we did get a lot of dances back and forth with Pluto and Aquarius. And we finally have Pluto and Aquarius for real, for real. So
Mhm.
maybe we can start with that.
Yeah, for real until 2023/2024 when the dance begins again.
That's so long.
44, 43, 44. We're 2025. Like this is a 20-year
Mm.
transit because it
Yeah.
started at the end of 2022.
Yeah.
So, yeah, Pluto's a really interesting one because Pluto is it's the lord of the underworld. Pluto is death, transformation, and rebirth. Pluto is helps us to understand our power, like our soul power. But it brings the shadow. Like Pluto illuminates power and shadow like nothing else. And it will evolve us, right? So does Uranus. Uranus evolves us, but Pluto also evolves us. Like the whole evolutionary astrology world is all about Pluto. Um, and so this one I find really interesting. And I think that when everybody was celebrating Pluto moving into Aquarius, I was like, yeah, great. But also just remember that all these things you're excited for is going to bring out the shadow. And so, yes, excitement with caution. And also, it's kind of predictable in some ways. Like, I like to look back in order to look forward. And if we look back, we can really see the way that Pluto has transformed our worlds. And I think a lot of people that are paying attention to astrology today weren't paying attention to astrology when Pluto was in Scorpio or when Pluto was in Sagittarius. And even to understand somebody like Anthony Fauci is in a Pluto opposition while Pluto is in Aquarius. And we don't think that that is something that happens because Pluto takes 250 years to go ish years, 247 years to go around the zodiac. But because it's like the orbit is egg shaped, those that are in Leo, like Pluto in Leo is opposition to Pluto in Aquarius. And there are people alive today who are Pluto in Aquarius that are like, it's a reckoning for, like there's things that are shadow, you know? And I kind of, he's kind of a strong figure in the world globally, but it's a really great one to look at because the decisions of that generation are really what's coming to a reckoning. And not just the decisions, like if we look at, because I said Fauci, him in decisions that he made in the last decade, but like actually when they were born, because it's the opposite, right? It's the opposition of Pluto to understand that, right? And so if we look like 80 some years ago, that's when Pluto was in Leo, not an even 125 years ago. 80 years ago, like what kind of decisions were we making 80 years ago? 90 years ago? There was war. We were in opposition to a wartime. And here we are in another wartime. And when we look at that, like communication was quite a bit different back then than it is today. And people can't get away with things the way that they could before. And when we look back at just Pluto in Sagittarius or Pluto in Capricorn, some of the shadow that got purged through those transits turned into some of the greatest gifts as we move forward. And so Pluto freshly out of Capricorn, we're seeing a lot of the shadow of government and system and structure and regulation and all of these things. We're seeing a lot of that shadow come out, right? We're seeing the shadow of the power of the structures that were created, you know, in the past when it's time for them to change. Like the US just went through its Pluto return, right? And we're seeing the shadow of the American governmental system and this whole colonialism. Like there's a lot of shadow that is like has been illuminated, and like a big call from society for systemic change and like what we've done to people, like the American war machine is just brutal. But it didn't start with Americans. War is as old as humans existed, right? Like, and so I also like to talk about the light, because another thing, even though sacred geometry, for example, is as old as time, more people got interested and started to understand sacred geometry through Pluto in Capricorn, because Capricorn is also the divine mother and it's all of creation. And so some of the most beautiful things, like we're looking at like geometric shapes in water, and we're understanding water and quantum physics and all this really beautiful stuff. And just wait and watch how that side of Pluto in Capricorn through Pluto in Aquarius is going to feed us in such a beautiful way. Like understanding frequency couldn't come into play without Pluto's action in the past of like understanding sacred geometry and code. And do you get what I'm saying? So I find Pluto to be a really difficult one to speak of because it's so triggering. And like whether you think Fauci's good or not, like whether you think he's good or bad, like is he a good guy or is he a bad guy, that's up for you. That everybody's opinion on that is going to be theirs. I mean, I have mine, I'll keep it reserved. But like he like this the like again, with any other topic that we talk about, some people are like, I love government. Some people are like, I love taxes. Some people are like, why are you changing the taxes? What's going on? This is super scary. Don't change the taxes. Taxes pay for the roads, they pay for the things. And then there's this other community that's like, taxation is theft. These are all Pluto themes, right? Like this is all Pluto coming out of Capricorn themes that now it's like all been tossed up in the air for us all to see and face. And now what are we going to do with it? And we go Pluto into Aquarius, and at first it's going to be like looking at the way community comes together and look at all these new technologies, all the quantum technologies, all the frequency, all the things that are coming out, all the phototherapy, all the bioluminescence, all the light therapy, all these things. And then there's going to be a shadow that comes out of this as well. Like, are we using frequency as another war machine? Like, is frequency another tool that we use against the people? AI, this great tool that comes in and we're like creating efficiencies and like changing things, but then is AI going to be another shadow? And like surveillance, like yes, it's great, we can track all these things and we can keep track of all the people and we can do all the things, but is it going to go and tip over into a world where we're like completely rejecting it as well? Like that's what we're up for. Like if I can use like a frequency device like Healy, we're both familiar, I'm sure a lot of your listeners, a lot of people that know me are familiar with Healy, and it can be something that's so powerful. That same technology is in our AirPods, like Apple AirPods, and they're reading your subconscious mind. And then what are they going to do with that information? Because the technology itself is neutral, but how we use it determines whether it's evil or for good, right? And like
Yeah.
you would never see me with AirPods in my ears, ever. And you'll also never be in my house without a frequency device emitting a frequency, because I don't trust that we're not being inundated with frequencies. Do you get what I
Yeah.
mean? Like,
Yep.
and I think a lot of people don't even know these technologies exist yet. Like somebody probably just heard me say that they're using the AirPods to monitor your brain waves in your subconscious mind. It's like, okay, conspiracy theorist, but it's actually in the patent. Like it's actually a real thing,
Yeah.
but you just don't know about it. So you reject what's foreign to you. And like for some people that understand these technologies, they're going to be more aware of it while it's happening. Just like some of the people that understood government knew that they didn't have your interest in the best heart. And all of a sudden other people did, and other people trusted government, and they're like, what the fuck? Their whole worlds are falling apart. They're like, what do
Yeah.
you mean? Like, no, of course the government has our best interest at heart. Like, so everybody's going to have their own relationship with Pluto as well, because how much are we embracing the shadow?
Mm.
And then the other thing is, like, call me a conspiracy theorist all you want. Pluto is the freaking conspiracy. It's what's happening behind the scenes. We cannot have a conversation about Pluto without talking about conspiracy theories any year of any decade. There's
Yeah.
always something happening behind the scenes. That's always happening. The theories, sure, some can be wackadoodle, some turn out to be true, like I don't believe everything I read, but I don't poo poo them and like not listen,
Yeah.
because conspiracy theories make you a crazy person. I think you're a crazy person if you're not willing to even listen. Like, no, I don't think you're a crazy person, actually. I think it's a coping mechanism. But like, I think that it's so important to be able to have an open mind because we are in a time where everything is changing faster than we can even dream it. And there's
Yeah.
always dreamers, and there's always innovators, and there's always those people that are moving. Like, it's impossible for us to know everything, but there are people driving a million different topics forward at all times.
Mm.
And so just because you haven't heard it before, or just because it's unfamiliar, just because you don't have a direct experience with something, like why would I say no to something without allowing myself to listen? Like why be so closed-minded? And that's
Yeah.
one of the big things that Pluto is here. You want to embrace the shadow, you want to embrace the unknown, you want to embrace the underworld, all of that, and like be willing to look at things from many different angles before
Yeah.
making a decision. Because if you're stuck thinking that something like you're already out of the game. If
Yep.
you think you're already lost. So, like, Pluto and in Aquarius, that's going to be super fast, super
Yeah.
fast. Like, I do believe that we are becoming psychic, increasingly
Absolutely.
psychic.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So,
So this I know thing brought up something like super funny and little, but I have a niece who's 6 and she's in this like little girl time of her life where whenever you tell her something, she's like, I know. And I'm like, you didn't know that. And she's like, yeah, I know. And so I was telling her, it's really important to be teachable. And she's like, what does that mean? And I said, you have to be open for people to tell you things. If you tell people, I know, they're not going to tell you anymore what they were telling you because
you
you're
know,
not listening,
yeah.
yeah. And I'm pretty sure you don't know, girl. Like you're 6. But I feel like this is important advice for all of us, me included, right? For all of us to be teachable because there are so many new things coming up in the world that if we like pretend that we know everything, we're not really going to learn anything. And also at the same time, be teachable while knowing where our morals lie and what our like ground is. Because if we are teachable without really knowing our own ground, then we're also in trouble because we can be filled with, like you said, like filled with conspiracy theories, filled with anything, and we don't have our own grounding. And 2025 is a year that we need to have our grounding.
Ooh, it's gonna be really hard. I mean, the ground's kind of falling out from underneath us.
Yes.
I mean,
So,
yes, I don't look at it. I don't look at it as grounding. I
okay,
don't
what
look
do
at
you
it
look
as
at it as?
grounding because the Earth is gone, right? Like it's
Yeah,
not cancel clear. I didn't mean the Earth is gone. The Earth is still here. We're not dying this year. We're not losing our Earth. Elementally, we're moving out of Earth and we're moving into fire and air, right? And so it's actually for me, it's the heart.
mm,
Like my ground is my heart. It's my center. It's to be connected to the devotional flame inside of me that is connected to source.
yeah.
We give a lot of intuition to water, but I really believe that intuition is fire. I think it's both. It's not one
Hmm.
or the other. I think it's both. Fire is really fast, primal, instinctive, intuitional wisdom. And I think that the ground isn't like necessarily the earth right now. I think the ground or the thing that we remain connected to is that eternal, unchanging essence inside of us that is so that remembers and knows it is of source essence,
Mm,
you know?
so,
Like
yeah.
I've noticed in my world of teaching, whether it's yoga or meditation or yoga nidra or astrology, when I'm amongst my peers, and I consider my peers to be somebody who has decades of practice, like decades of practice of tuning in, like active practice of tuning in. And um, my peers, whether we're in conversation or not, are connected to the same message. And there is a message that is moving through the hearts of billions of people at the same time from the same source. And some know how to listen to that and some don't. And that's the thing that we remain connected to. Like, I can listen to all the conspiracy theories and be like, nope, 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 yes, nope, nope, nope. You know what I mean? Because I'm like, I, okay, I'm just going to divert for 1 second. Have you heard this podcast called Telepathy Tapes?
No, tell me more.
Okay, Telepathy Tapes. I'm not all the way through it yet. I'm totally addicted. I'm actually listening to it at every moment I possibly can. But it's basically these group of scientists. It's a few scientists that were brought together or came together to study a phenomena of telepathy that is primarily happening in nonverbal autistic humans. And these people can fully read minds. The one I listened to the other day, the woman who's nonverbal autistic, they talk through through devices and stuff. Um, say us, we're voice users, or they don't say the normal people like we're voice users, but
Yeah.
they can 100% read the minds of people, mostly their mom or their siblings, but also like in rooms of people, it gets really noisy because they're reading the minds. And two nonverbal autistic people can often just have these like fully telepathic conversations.
Mm.
And the reason I bring that forward is like, okay, so we all accept that we can transfer information from like computer to computer. Like we're literally on the other side of the world from each other without a delay in a conversation because this information is moving like that.
Yep.
This kid, this woman started asking this kid, I think he's 18, about his gifts. Like, when did he first notice them? When do you like how like was there times when you don't? Blah, blah, blah. And he told her, if he lies, his gift goes away.
Ooh.
And for probably a decade, if not longer, if you come close in my inner world of like working with me, the first thing I say is, if you want to turn on your intuition, you need to clean out your lies. You need to tell the truth. And when he said that, I was like, yes, because if you are telling lies, you don't know what truth feels like in your
Mm.
body. You don't have that compass of truth. And that truth comes from the purification of you, which is the ability to feel the truth is the purification of you. And you look at like yoga philosophy, yoga practice, it is a purification practice. And the more purification work you do, the more your cities or your psychic senses come online. And do you see where I'm going with this? And
Mm-hmm.
so if we're anchoring to something right now, it's to be the purest, most authentic expression of you. Going back to Pluto, you want to understand Pluto in Aquarius, you have to look at Pluto, you have to understand Pluto and Leo, where I very started, right? What is it?
Yep.
What is Leo? Leo is the most
That's
authentic
her.
expression possible.
Yep.
And what is the one of the greatest emotions to go through to bring you to an authentic expression? Grief. You can't fake grief. And so here we are in this war time, fires, wars, everything. We're in this mass global grief cycle that is bringing us into greater expressions of authenticity, where we have to get increasingly honest with ourselves, where we're purging our shadow through Pluto. And the more we anchor to that authenticity within ourselves, which is the part of us that is remembering our divine nature, you can see through all the lies of the world. You can
Mm.
see through the propaganda. You can see through the conspiracy theories that are true and that are actually unfolding right in front of us. And so the grief sucks, but it's taking us somewhere really valuable.
Which it does.
Ooh,
Oh my goodness. Okay, so let's replace ground with anchor. Um, Perhaps anchoring is a better way to put it because we can be anchored into our heart. Um, or we can be anchored into anything else we believe in, especially if the ground is falling out from under us. Um, okay, so you started talking about Pluto and Aquarius. Let's go to Uranus from this, since,
Uranus. Okay, so
yeah,
Uranus. Uranus, everybody says it their own ways. My husband's like, just say Uranus. I'm like, Uranus. Anyways. Okay, so it's been in Taurus. Uranus moved in Taurus in 2018. Sorry. So 2018, and we're 2024, 6 years. There you go. You're right.
okay.
Exactly. When you look at Uranus and Taurus, it's actually kind of like a conflicting energy because Uranus is very quick and it
Hmm.
changes things very fast, and Taurus is extremely slow. And so Uranus can't be its fullest self in Taurus because
Hmm.
it wants to move fast. And often when signs are beside each other, their opposite is right beside each other. So where Taurus is like fixed and slow and life first burns really slow there, things change very fast. Gemini is immutable. Like things change really fast in Gemini. It's mutable. Gemini is ruled by Mercury, which some people say Mercury and Uranus are like different octaves of each other. Like Mercury is the personal, where Uranus is the generational, right? And so Uranus, we have just kind of had a bit of a break from Uranus in some ways because it's been slower, believe it or not. But as it moves back and forth between Gemini and Taurus this year, like it's in Taurus now, it's going to move on July 7th into Gemini. It stations retrograde in September 5th. And then November 7th, it moves back into
Taurus.
Taurus.
Yeah.
And then in 2026, it'll move back into Gemini. So we're just going to have a little window from July to November where we get a
Yeah.
taste of Gemini. And
Yep.
then we're going to end the year with it in Taurus until
Taurus.
April, the end of
Yeah.
April, right? So we're just getting a taste of this speeding up and change. And again, I don't really know. We can't speak in any kind of definitives. We can talk about the energy of it.
Yep.
We're moving from fixed earth to mutable air. We're moving from the body to the mind. We're moving from like Mother Earth and physical body and values, actually. Have we not been getting worked on our values over the last 4 years? I have. I have been worked on my
So much
values.
value work. Yep.
Yeah. And Gemini is the duality. So here we come circling back to this conversation about duality again.
Yep.
And I think we're going to be pendulating back and forth between opposites faster than ever before. And thank God Jupiter is, half of 2024 and half of 25 in Gemini, because that's Jupiter's the highest teaching and it's like training us. It's like
Yep.
our post-secondary education on what's to come, like
Yep.
where the highest teachings come from. So we've had this taste of opposites through Jupiter, but then we're going to have this big Jupiter experience, or sorry, opposite experience through Uranus and Gemini. And Uranus is going to be in Gemini until 2032.
Yep.
So how many
That's a
years
good
is that?
while. That's about
Yeah,
7 years.
yeah. So and then of course it does that little back and forth dance. Always it does that. So it's like fixed. It's like set in 2033. Pardon me, in Cancer.
Mm.
So I really think that some of our biggest homework for Uranus is to get super comfortable pendulating back and forth between opposites. And we even see this initiation into Gemini with that, like fast, slow, right? Like
Mhm.
slow, fast, slow again, and then fast. And it's going to be the mind. It's all, but okay. So, in the same way that I talked about Pluto being like death, transformation, and rebirth, like the Lord of the Underworld, Uranus is the great awakener. Uranus is the creative genius, the innovator. Uranus is super disruptive, like very disruptive, like really discontinuous energy, like super spontaneous. It's unpredictable. Like you cannot know what Uranus is going to do. That's why I'm like, I can't pretend to know what Uranus is going to do in Gemini. I just know that's going to affect the mind, and it's going to be
Yeah.
playing in the opposites. It's going to be this polarity work, and it's going to be changing and transforming community, because in 2026 we're going to start to see Uranus and Pluto engaging in a trine. And then
Hmm.
watch out, because now we've got two air signs with two of the biggest culture changing planets coming together, working together to create change in very fast moving archetypes. And this is where I think this psychic society is going to be born out of,
Mm. Yeah.
and that's why, like, in my bio, I talk about us moving into becoming a psychic society, and that we have to get into integrity now, because,
Yeah.
like, just because somebody else can't read minds, somebody else can. And this is going to come online really quickly. And if you're out of integrity, everybody's going to know. And it's going to be community. It's community. Both Aquarius and Gemini are community based signs. Like, community is going to change. We are realizing government does not have our backs. Some countries are way ahead of us on this, but like, and part of that might be like a more of a one world type government coming in for a little while, maybe that moving out, maybe that, like, the framework is being built for it, you know? And so, and are the people going to accept it, or are we going to reject it? Like, what are we going to do with it? We don't know. It's impossible to know.
Uranus and Gemini just feels like a wild card, which we really cannot predict. It's already a planet of chaos and breakdowns and breakthroughs and the Great Awakener. And then in Gemini, which is just my dad was a Gemini, and he had Sun conjunct Mars in Gemini. So I feel like I witnessed that my whole life of like confusion and then saying one thing and then saying, no, no, I meant this. And then saying, no, no, I meant this. Oh, no, I didn't say that. I said this. And then just always out with so many people and always wanting to be surrounded by people that are on the same caliber as him or better so that he can strive to achieve better. And just as you're talking about all this is like all Uranus and Gemini, and it just really feels like a wild card with a lot. And we can predict, but I feel like what we're predicting or what we end up predicting will be like the tip of the iceberg. Like maybe not even the tip. Maybe just I don't know, we're like looking with binoculars and we really won't know until we're in
We're
the
not
heart
going
of
to be
it.
the same. We're not going to be the same. We're not
Yeah.
going to be the same. Like, we're just not. Like, if we
Yeah.
go back in history, Uranus works on 84-year cycles. So if we look back, like the last time Uranus was in Gemini was 1941,
Ooh.
1942, all the way through to 1948. So you all go do your history lesson on the kind of stuff that was going on around then. And even the history books can't fully agree, because it depends on whose perspective it is. And that is so Gemini, right? Like,
Yes.
you put three people in a room together having the same experience, all three people are coming out with a different perspective of what happened.
Yep.
Right. And so, yeah, I don't see us being the same. I don't see humanity being the same. I think this little, and we didn't have, uh like, if I just pull up the chart for that really quick, Pluto was not in a trine. No, there isn't a configuration during that time with Uranus. They weren't in a
Yeah.
configuration with each other. But we could look at quickly the last time, like if I want to go aspects, the last time we had Uranus trine Pluto, there's people have written books about the power of Uranus trine Pluto. But it
Mm.
was in the 20s was the last time we had Pluto trine Uranus. And look at what a transformative time the 20s were.
Yeah.
Like
And we're
22.
back in the 20s.
We're back in the
A
20s.
different kind of 20s.
Different kind of 20s, but some similar themes. But we will see similar themes from the 20s.
Yeah.
But that Pluto trine Uranus was in different signs, so it's not really totally comparable. But we can see how much it causes transformation. So
Yeah.
then it was Uranus was in Pisces and Pluto was in Cancer. So it was water, where this
Mm,
time now we're in air.
we're in air. Okay, I see it. And just knowing the energy of Pluto and knowing the energy of Uranus. Yeah, I can imagine how it's, yeah. Okay, I'm looking forward to seeing what happens um, while being anchored in and not being susceptible to chaos. Okay, so this is a great place
Oh,
now to just
we're all going to be chaotic. Let's not, we just all need to accept some chaos.
fair enough. Fair enough.
I actually think it's a very pragmatic approach to be like, just acknowledge there's going to be chaos.
Yeah.
We're going to be like managing our relationship with chaos,
Ooh, I like that.
right?
Yeah.
Or developing a relationship with chaos.
Even like first off, like defining chaos, right? What is chaos to us even? And then maybe we can start to build a relationship with it. Because if we don't know what it is and we're just working based on the definition of a dictionary or working based on the definition of someone, we're back in this Gemini territory where we don't even know what we're talking about anymore.
Well, and something that's just popping in for me. So I was in this like sacred geometry workshop in 2012 and 13 and 14. It was like an ongoing sacred geometry thing that I was doing. And the teacher said that even in chaos, there's order. So, and he shared this study about, they thought that rainfall was chaotic, like it was disordered, but they put down these giant sheets and it was measuring the pattern of rainfall, and even rainfall was actually ordered. And so even though, and that is so Piscean and Virgo, like, to go back to the notes for a second, is that
Yeah.
even in the chaos there's order, even in the chaos there's purpose. And so that's what I say, like, let's not deny that chaos is going to be a part of it, but let's just like get into relationship with chaos because it's all purposeful.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay, but I
I
did
love that.
interrupt you.
True.
You were going somewhere and I'm sorry, I had to.
That's fine. I was going into Aries where more chaos just comes to be. So it sounds about right. Maybe we can start with Saturn in Aries before talking about Neptune in Aries.
Okay. Well, Saturn works in 27 to 29-year cycles, right? So,
Yep.
because it spends about 2.5 years in a sign. Everybody, well, not everybody, but most people are initiated into the Saturn world in their late 20s when they go through their first Saturn return. And so we know Saturn's the lord of karma. His tool is time. And Saturn, you can't really get away from Saturn. When Saturn comes for you, Saturn comes for you.
Mm,
Saturn moving from Pisces into Aries, these again, we've talked a lot about the oppositeness of Pisces and Aries.
yep.
Um, Aries, so Pisces can cause a lot of confusion because it's so ethereal and not everybody meets us on the ethereal plane. And Saturn and Pisces are kind of opposite energies. Like Saturn builds and creates structure and system, where Aries is like dissolving all structure and system to like return to this really etheric thing. And so I think that part of what Saturn has been doing in Pisces is building the energetic structure of new systems and structure that we may not fully realize yet, but we're all dreaming it together. And that's another reason why I think this dreaming is such an important thing. Like when people are like poo-pooing me for not getting all lost in the war world and still like dreaming about a bright future, I was like, we need the dreamers. It is vital that we have the dreamers because this ethereal, this energetic imprint is being built now. Saturn moving into Aries, we kick off a new, you know, 27 to 29-year cycle for Saturn. And so just a heads up, all the Pisces and Virgos in the world, you've been having a rough time. I know you have. Well, oh, I see you. It's going to shift into Aries and Libra, where Saturn is going to be moving through Aries and in opposition to Libra. You can also look at the cardinal, like with Pisces, it was all the mutable signs. So Pisces, Virgo, and then Gemini and Sagittarius, where Saturn was given a hard time to. Saturn moving into Aries is going to do Aries and Libra, and Cancer and Capricorn is where Saturn's going to really be working. The people who are going to be feeling a little bit better are going to be the other fire signs, right? So Saturn was helpful to the other water signs, so Cancer and Scorpio, where now it's going to be easier, like helping grow and mature Leo and Sagittarius, and then giving those cardinal signs a hard time. So I don't know. I think it's really interesting to see Saturn move into Aries, remembering that Saturn is exalted in Libra. So, in the opposite sign, Saturn and Libra makes so much sense together for me as like an exalted place, because Libra is like people pleaser and overgiving of self and sacrificing self for other, where Saturn gets exalted there because Libra gets a lot of power by embracing Saturn energy of creating boundaries and saying
Mm,
like, actually, I need this is my boundary. Like that helps Libra so much. Saturn
yeah.
is one of Libra's best friends. Libras need to learn how to be in right relationship with Saturn. That is vital to a successful Libra life.
Mm.
And so, but it's going to be in opposition to Libra. So the Libras are going to get schooled in like, how are you setting boundaries for yourself? How are you having devotion and discipline? How are you staying true to yourself? Where the Aries are going to be like, hey, you selfish little fuckers. Just kidding. I'm totally joking. But it's going to like kind of call out some of these, like, the more stereotypical Aries qualities.
Yeah.
But it's also going to ask Aries to move from being selfish to being centered in oneself in a way that allows them to be that sacred warrior. And the growth that gets you from being selfish to being that sacred warrior is going to be a huge piece. And I
Mhm.
think we can say that's true for Aries, like people with Aries in their chart, but I think it's going to be like a bigger theme in general, because we are so selfish, you know?
Mm.
We're
Mhm.
selfish because we live in late stage capitalism, and we live in this like falling empire right now, and we're just like trying to survive, and there's so many people just trying to survive. Who knows what's going to happen with the money system? We didn't even talk about that with Uranus, but like, come on, who knows what's going to happen in there. And so there is a little bit of this like dog eat dog world, and like every man for himself, and like survival of the fittest, and like how do I just take care of my base needs, but that ultimately will get turned into to be centered in oneself and to be able to be there and be that sacred warrior for each other, because we have these other things that are so community driven. Like community is going to become like such a key thing, a key factor of reality. Like knowing your community, we've been talking about this for years now, but like it's like we were in the workshop and now it's real life,
Yeah.
where, you know, yeah, we got to show up for each other in a whole new way. And so Saturn's going to be putting a little bit of boundaries on ourself, like question some karma around our selfishness to
Mm.
become centered in oneself. Neptune and Saturn are going to come into a conjunction. And
Yeah.
even though the conjunction isn't exact through 2025, it's dancing right there on the edge. Like it's close all year, you
Yeah.
know? And then it's exact in 2026. And so I think that's why that's the more relevant thing. And Saturn and Neptune are such opposite energies. Oh my God. Neptune wants to dissolve, Saturn wants to build structure and system. And it was 2014 when Saturn and Neptune were in their closing square.
Mm.
So in 2014, when we saw this like really big like crisis between form and the formless, now they're coming together, and like what we're having to dissolve for the sake of building form. Like it is the dissolution of form, these two coming together. It is like the ending of things.
Yeah.
And this is something we haven't really talked about so far, but I'm just going to plop this in here. When I look at the year's transits, right? Like what's conjunct, what's trine, what's square, what's sextile, what's opposite, all these things. One of the patterns that I'm looking for is, are we seeing more opening transits or closing transits? So an opening cycle or a closing cycle. And we are far more dominant on closing cycles this year. Like we are coming to ending after ending after ending after ending. We are in biblical historic times, and we are coming to endings like we've never seen before, all at once. And then also to have Saturn and Neptune, like the dissolution of the old world. And then they actually conjunct in Aries. So we're going to start to in 2026. And so we're going to start to see the beginnings of the new world in 2026. But we're going to have this phase, like, this is the bridge, this dance between these two worlds, like endings and new beginnings, and like teasing into new energy and then going back to old energy and like finishing up old business and like closing up shop on the things that are expired and like purging and cleansing and rethinking our relationship with reality. Like, there's a lot happening in 2025. In 2026, we're going to start on this new background feeling of all these generational planets, right? Like, they're all going to be like set. They're not going to change signs for a long time till 2032. Nobody's changing signs of these outer planets till 2032. And we're just getting to know the new energy in 2026. And then that's going to be the beginnings of something that all of us are going to be like Bambi's. Like, what is this world? And like, do we have a financial system? I don't know. I can't say that we do, or that the financial system's still the same. Like, is crypto, like, what's the role of crypto through this whole change? What happens with currency through all of these changes? Those are all Uranus themes that I didn't mention. But like Saturn and Neptune coming together in Aries, Aries is the beginning. It's the trailblazer. It is the pioneer. It is the beginning, it's the true beginning of new systems. But with that comes the dissolving, the dissolution of old systems. But you have to remember, we also saw Saturn and Pluto conjunct in 2020,
Mhm.
right? And we won't see, when will we see Saturn and Uranus? I can get a date on that just to give you an idea, because Saturn is karma, so it's resetting karma. Saturn and Uranus will not come into a conjunction until 2032. So
Oh,
Saturn and Uranus still have a lot of old unfinished business, and it's going to be in Gemini. Like, that's still Gemini. It's at 28 degrees of
the
Gemini.
end. Yeah.
And if you want to get into like the mythology, like Saturn and Uranus are a father-son relationship. So they are still working some stuff out through here. But like this karmic relationship with Pluto is 2020, and then we have Neptune in 2025, and then we have Uranus in 2032. And so these are like pretty big bookend, like marker years for karmic changes.
Yeah.
Yeah. So one of the themes that I'm anticipating is a lot of truth to be revealed through this transit. Because Pisces is like a master theater and storytelling and confusion, right? Like, and Neptune is the theater and it is the illusion. Neptune is the grand illusion, and it's been in Pisces. So Neptune's been so strong in Pisces, creating an illusion for who's good. I don't know. I have no idea. Like,
Isn't
who's
Neptune news as well?
isn't, yes, it's the news, it's the
Muse?
media, it's all art and entertainment, it's the arts, it's mind altering substances, it's medicine, it's like pharmacy, pharmaceuticals, it's also plant medicine, it's anything that alters your mind. Storytelling alters your mind, and like, it's the play, it's the theater. Like, political theater has never been so grand.
Yeah.
Like, maybe it has. I don't know. I just haven't paid attention. I feel like political theater is like on a whole other level right now. And I
Yeah.
think when these guys both move into Aries, Aries is like not fucking around. Aries is like not bullshitting. It wants truth. It wants answers. It's super competitive. Aries is ruled by Mars. Mars is passion. It's fighting. It's war. It's the warrior. I think we're going to see things come out that people would never believe. Like, I think we're going to see, I think that it's going to bring with it a lot of revelations. I mean, there's no mistake that all the Christians and the Catholics are talking about the book of Revelations right now. Like, this is all kind of like, and I don't know the book of Revelations. I've never read it. I've never read the Bible. I wasn't raised in a religion. I was raised more in like a God is everywhere, our spirit is everywhere, like, more of like an animistic type uh spirituality.
Yeah.
Um but like, revelation, there's things to be revealed with this. And
Mm.
remember, Saturn is Chronos, it's the lord of time, and so it will all come out in good time, you know?
Yeah.
In the theater, the props start to get removed from the theater, and we start to see the puppeteer, who's the puppet master, like, what was that? Start to see a lot of things.
Mm. Well, yeah. I mean, it's a lot of big stuff, especially considering that it's Aries and it's the beginning and it's the beginning after the end, which is Pisces. So there is just a lot and a lot of new and a lot of different and a lot of purpose, I think, that will come up um, for each one of us, maybe also for the world, maybe also for the story, but it's a lot. So thank you for going through the lot of it with me.
I think we'll also see a lot of new souls to Earth coming in. Like right now, we have a lot of old souls, so they say. We
Yeah.
have a lot of old souls that came here for this time to help usher us through this transformation. I think we're going to
Hmm.
see some really fresh new souls come in that are going to teach us some really amazing new things. Like the kids, I can't wait to meet like my son in 20 years from now, like
Yeah.
my little guy who came in and at the end of 2019, like he came just in time for this like grand transformation kicking off in 2020. You know, like who what did he come here with? What's he
Yeah.
here to teach us? You know, and then imagine the kids that are coming in 2025 and 2026 with all this new energy.
Hmm.
Hmm.
I always say I like wonder what my kid is going to be like when I have a kid because it's just such a new generation and I see the way my nephew and my nieces are and like they're just so ahead of their time and I cannot wait to see what kind of kids will I don't know come out of me. Like that's crazy to think of and it's crazy to imagine and the way that I'm going to be so schooled and here I am saying grounding for chaos and that kid is probably going to be like chaos is all you're ever going to know.
Who knows? I actually think we'll move towards a greater period of peace
Mm,
after this.
yeah,
I do. I really do think so. I really do.
yeah. I
Yeah.
I think and hope and dream so too, and especially if we're doing the dreaming and if we continue to do the dreaming, then there
Mhm.
is definitely hope. I feel like there's never not any hope, especially when we're having conversations like this. Oh my God, there is hope.
Absolutely. Yes. We are
Okay, so
being
I know we've gone over time. I have one Instagram question. Would you like to
okay.
answer it?
Sure.
Okay. The question is about Cancer. It's
Mm.
how do you relate to or hold the pain of Mars, especially in Cancer and now in retrograde?
Hold the pain of Mars. I don't feel Mars's pain.
How do you feel Mars in Cancer?
Cancer's a really interesting archetype for Mars, especially
Mhm.
because it's not its greatest power spot. You know, like there's some astrological terms that I'll just leave out at the moment, but like Mars isn't typically known as being strong there. But I believe that Mars in Cancer is vital because
Mm.
it's where we really start to get fierce about our self care and the way we nurture ourselves and the way that we nurture each other. And it also is like the mother wound. Cancer, Mars in Cancer is the mother wound. There's no, you can't ignore that part of it, right?
Yeah.
And not to say that everybody has a wound with their mother, but like it's also like our wound with the divine mother. You know, it's like our disconnect from source. And I think that there's a lot of opportunity with Mars in Cancer to start to really take care of yourself and to reparent yourself and to get serious about taking care of yourself. And it can be anything, like just like committing to flossing your teeth. You know, like it doesn't have to be some big huge thing, but like, you know, going to the gym once a week is better than once a week, you know,
Ye-
or
yeah.
right? And like
Yep.
getting serious about taking care of yourself. There's a lot of people in this world that are not taking care of themselves. They're doing the opposite of taking care of themselves. They're super unhealthy. I mean, I, I I have so much to say about this topic actually, but like, yeah, we got to get serious about how we take care of ourselves. We really
Yeah.
do. And we have Jupiter moving into Cancer, June 19th. So Jupiter's moving into Cancer as well. But this is Mars. If I really get down to the essence of Mars, Mars is where we find the most energy in your
Mm,
chart. Like if you want to understand where you can draw the most energy from in your chart, like my Mars is in the 11th house. I get the most energy. I get so lit up in group. You put me on a stage in front of a bunch, my Mars in Leo in the
mm,
11th house. You put me on a stage in front of a bunch of people and I just get so much energy. Like I could, that's like eating the most nutritious meal for me
mm.
is to like, like I get the most out of that. Public speaking, that's like my dream. I would love to be like a world renowned public speaker. That would just be like my life would be freaking, I would love that.
I can't
Because
wait.
I
It's
get
coming.
fed. It feeds me so much, right? And so if
Yeah.
you want to look at where you get the most energy, you want to look at Mars. And then Mars should bring excitement to your life. Mars should bring a competitive edge. It should bring your passion. And people like, because Mars is the Lord of War, people are like, Mars. But like, just the same way that we got to make friends with Saturn, making friends with Mars and really getting to know your Mars and understanding your energy of Mars can completely change your life,
Mm,
especially
yeah.
for people that are suffering with like depressive moments. Like we all go through depression in our life at some point. But like when you're feeling really depressed or you really are lacking energy, like go to Mars. Go find your Mars. Go figure out what's going on with Mars. So Mars in Cancer, it's like a really retrograding in Cancer. Like get real about how you are or aren't taking care of yourself, how you are or aren't reparenting yourself, how you are or aren't paying attention to how we nurture ourselves and then nurture those ones that we love the most. That's what this is all about for me. The pain of Mars, I mean, there's so much fighting and war in the world. I think that, like, one of the disadvantages of technology and the way that information moves so quickly is that our nervous systems don't know the difference of like seeing an image and being in the image.
Yeah.
And I think that if you are trashing your nervous system by watching war, you need to turn it off for a little bit. I really do. I don't think that lacks empathy. I don't think that lacks compassion. I think that is the most loving thing you can do to yourself because you are
Mm,
literally bringing that war into your body.
yeah.
Just
Yeah.
stop.
We don't want that.
Just stop. And I doom scroll like the rest of them. Like I cannot get off my phone sometimes. I'm not saying like I'm some high horse, but like know when to turn it off, know when to
Mm,
go into the forest or take a bath or, you know, go hit a punching bag or whatever you need to do to like move that energy out and like come back to yourself.
yeah. I feel like a big part of Mars in Cancer is moving our bodies just because emotions can get so stuck and it's so easy to sit with those emotions and mule over the emotions and create art from the emotions, which that's amazing, but also like the need to physically move it out. And I also love how you said reparenting because I'm thinking about how we got a glimpse of Mars in Leo and maybe that taught us where we feel like we're not on our own side. And so with Mars moving back into Cancer, it's okay, how can you now get on the same side so that when Mars goes back into Leo, we're not really looking to be that strict parent, but instead we're looking to play because we know that we're here to take care of ourselves rather than have this like really tough mom mentality with ourselves.
Yeah. Yeah.
Huh.
Those voices. Well,
Seriously.
and Mars in Leo is going to be big because that's also going to take us through our last Mars opposite Pluto,
Mm,
which is a big one for purging the shadow. and it's
Yeah.
also really, it's a dangerous transit. It's like things, it's an explosive transit. So that's in April.
Mm,
So there's some energy there,
mm,
you know.
mm. Yeah. Okay. I think we can leave that energy for the future. We talked a lot about fire, and I feel like fire generally behaves similarly to other fire signs. Of course, there are differences, but as an element, fire is fire and water is water. And so you can get a little bit of glimpse from everything that we've spoken about of what Mars in Leo could possibly look like. Do you want to say anything about it? Or are you
I think it's just like really returning to the most authentic self.
okay?
It's such I mean, I think as a Mars and Leo person myself,
Yeah.
most people
Go.
are drawn to me because I'm so authentic. Like I could not be authentic if I tried. I can't fake
Mhm,
it. I'm not a
mhm,
I suck at telling lies. I get really excited and like my expression is big, and that's very much Mars and Leo. And I think it's a beautiful opportunity to like just honor the energy that's moving through you and like really coming home to yourself,
yeah.
coming home to your heart.
Okay, Jenna, that's a perfect place for me to ask you my next question because it's like you knew it. My question is, what do you feel like makes you a hardest?
Ah! Oh, I'm such a devotee of the heart, I just think that the heart is our compass always, I just, and we live in a world of broken hearts, and I just want to like be a part of what tends to that individual and collective heart,
Mm,
it's just, I remember one time I guided this astro nidra where it was a yoga nidra, it was part of a yoga nidra training. And I guided people to the space around their heart. And the whole practice was actually just about how to land in the heart.
mm,
And by sitting outside of it, it gave people an opportunity to feel all the barriers that we put around the heart. And there was this part of the practice was about rebuilding that trust with yourself, like with your own heart, for all the ways your heart has been broken. Like your mind needs to build that trust again before your heart's going to
yeah,
really let you in,
yeah.
and I think if there was one thing that I really revere about the heart is that it has its own intelligence and its own way of protecting itself. And it is like the most sacred and vulnerable space that we have. And it's not one that can be broken down through force. It has to be through tenderness, and it has to be through trust, and it has to be through love, and it has to be through kindness, and it has to be through authenticity,
Mm,
and like the more we look at all of those qualities of the heart, like that's the way to the heart, is through all the qualities of the heart. And so like I just want to help and like be an example of that in any opportunity that I have, and like to help people to reconnect with that, because the journey back to the heart is not actually as easy as like just go in your heart. Okay. Like for some people it is natural, but for a lot of people it's not. There's been a lot of
yeah.
walls built around our hearts, and like I would love to just play even the smallest role in helping to melt those walls away for people.
Mm, thank you for being that and doing that. And I feel like you've really helped me do that from the like beginning of when I started following you and knew you and started learning astrology from you. And I keep coming back because the way you share astrology is just so empowering and so filled with love. There is astrology that's fearful and there's astrology that's like angry and heavy, but the way you share astrology is always just so heartful. And so I'm so
Mm.
happy that I get to have you share astrology on this podcast. And you touched on astronidras, which I know you create so beautifully. Could you please tell people what those are and how they can access you, your work, your astronidras, and anything else you want to share about?
Yeah, thank you. So Astro Nidras, so I'm a diehard fan of Yoga Nidra. Yoga Nidra is a practice that it's not yoga like you think of yoga. You like late, Shavasana, everybody loves Shavasana. It's like an extended Shavasana is the easiest way to say it. but you're laying down in the practice and you allow your body to fall asleep and you keep awareness online. And we go through this beautiful journey through the body and the subconscious mind. And one of my own objections to astrology, because I'm forever, in the contrast, in the polarities, is that people start to follow blindly. And I wanted to share astrology in a way that gave you an opportunity to have your own embodied experience with it. And so I use astrological themes and I look at things like medical astrology and like where astrology lives in the body, as well as different somatic exercises and embodiment work. And I kind of merge them all together into an astro nidra. And I have been releasing them with the sun signs, although it's evolving. It would be weird if this year I didn't evolve. um, but I have all these astro nidras inside of my membership at attunetothemoon.com. And the idea is that you could lay down for this practice and you would be more connected to the cosmos than any astrology report could ever take you to, because the cosmos lives inside of you. And your body is a ear to the universe, and it's up to us to learn how to listen. And so my part in helping you to learn how to listen is through crafting and creating these astro nidras that take you inside where the universe lives, just like it lives outside of you. It's inside of you.
And they're so calming. I always fall asleep when I do an Astro Nidra. Always. I always. And I'm like, no, this time I'm going to stay up because I want to catch the end, but I fall asleep. So I think I need to just start doing them, maybe sitting up or like reclined, but not completely laying down. Or is it
Or,
fine that I just fall asleep?
I mean, yes, but if you did them in the morning, like after a good sleep, like do them
Hmm.
when you're well rested, then you can stay aware through them. But lots of people fall asleep to them. But the real gold of the practice comes when you can remain aware, because now you're traveling between worlds. And as you go in between these worlds, the ability to travel through different states of consciousness, like yoga nidra is actually a death practice, like it is my main attraction to yoga nidra came when I realized that uh, if we look at karma and reincarnation, there's some really badass sages and saints and karmapas and Dalai Lamas who die and stay aware of themselves through the bardo and come back into this world, and they remember themselves in their new life. And yoga nidra is a practice that takes you through these different states of mind that allow you to stay aware through all different kinds of transitions, including death. Like it's actually kind of the perfect practice for this year because we're going through such a strong transition and the mind is going to change significantly. But like if you could come back and like choose your next life and remember who you are and carry that wisdom through lifetime to lifetime, like I know that's a really big ask, but that was my big attraction to the practice of yoga nidra, is to remain aware through different states of consciousness. So if you're just falling asleep in the practice, you're missing out on the opportunity to learn how to do
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly. It feels so great also for the Pisces North Node and the Virgo South Node. Just this act of getting your body kind of still so that what needs to come through can come through. And there's so much happening beyond the surface. But if someone were to see you, they're like, oh, she's just laying down. But there's so much happening inside there while you're laying down.
Yeah. I mean, a more practical approach to the practice, it helps you to process your day. It helps you to process emotional experiences. I never claim it as a trauma practice, but like it's been studied to be one of the greatest things to move trauma out of your body. Like it's more effective than meditation. They use it with war vets. There's a
Mm.
whole world of yoga nidra called iRest that is actually doing studies with war vets to like help them move through PTSD. So it helps us process life in a really profound way. The practice will always meet you where you're at. And it really helps to attune you to your psychic senses, and it really helps you to get to know yourself. Like everybody says, listen to your inner voice, but they don't ever give you a practice to do it. But this is the practice that helps you to do it. So, I mean, it's very practical. And if you can't sleep, it's amazing. Like just to go right back to where you said, like anybody who's having sleep issues, like do yoga nidra. It will
Yeah.
change your sleep cycle. So it meets you exactly where you're at. So if you're falling asleep, fine. But also Try and stay aware. It's been funny.
I love it. Thank you for creating them. And where can people find you? And how can they access your work? And how can they work with you?
Yeah, so attunetothemoon.com is where the membership is. JanaRoemer.com is where you'll find like trainings and retreats. It's not totally signed and sealed, but we're going to Greece this year. I'm going to bring people up
Wow.
to the Kootenays in Canada for retreats. And then I'm going to bring back my yoga nidra training probably in the fall is what's planned for right now, and publishing an astro journal. So a way for you to be offline and connected to the astrology. I've got so much going on this year. I love it. It's so exciting. And then Instagram is kind of a central hub, attuned to the moon or Jana_Roemer. I'm sure we can type that all out underneath the
Yes.
show
Yeah.
notes.
I'll have it all in the bio.
Oh, and one more place that's super awesome is Insight Timer. Insight Timer, I have a 10-day course on there, and I also have free stuff. The first 3 astro ninjas I ever created are on Insight Timer for free. And then I also I put a Saturn practice on there for Saturn and Pisces, called Your Inner Elder. So we talk a
Mm.
lot about like tapping into your inner child, but like you can also tap into your inner elder and like get some wise old sage advice from the you that's already lived the moment that you're in now and like help you through that. So that's free on Insight Timer, which is it's a free app. So yeah.
Perfect. So for anyone that heard Jenna talk about Astronidra and you're like, what is that? And yeah, Insight Timer is a great place to check it out before going deeper or before choosing to join the membership, which is also awesome. I love how on your membership, not membership page, but on the Attune to the Moon page, how there's where the sun is and where the moon is and a little blurb about what it even means. And for
Hmm.
anyone that doesn't understand astrology, that's a great place to start because you just make it so simple to understand and it's just very practical.
Yeah. Maybe we should put a link to the Saturn practice in the show notes, that
Sure.
people can download and have for free by themselves. And that, I mean, it's nice. Then you don't have to download an app. You can just have it on your phone. You can
Cool.
listen
I'll
on
do that.
offline. Yeah. Cool. Yeah.
Perfect. Thank you, Jenna. It's been
Thank
amazing
you.
having you here.
Thank you so much for having me. And, I think it's really amazing that we have come together the way that we have and just our like timelines of losing a parent and like it's such a big event. And I just want to like really honor you in that as well. And
Mm.
just the good work that you're doing, spreading the love, the heart, the astrology, everything. You're doing such amazing work in this world.
Thank you.
Thank
And so are you. I'm so here for all the things you're going to be creating in 2025. I cannot wait.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for being here for another episode of the Cosmic Heartist podcast. If you resonate, please leave a comment or leave a 5-star review. I would love that so much. If you're not into doing that, maybe you could share it on your story to maybe have someone new listen to the podcast, discover the podcast. I've had such incredible conversations with people, mostly women, on this podcast in the last 1 year. They are leaders, they are artists, they are creatives, they are filled with gems and advice and just a beautiful way of witnessing life. So if you want to get a glimpse of life through someone else's eyes, through an artist's eyes, check out the podcast and share it with more people. I'm sending you a ton of love. I'll catch you on the next episode. Bye for now.